Hi, this is Karan from San Francisco.
And this is Alex from Los Angeles, and welcome to Movies That Shaped Us, a journey of self-discovery through a shared love of film. We are two longtime friends who grew up on opposite ends of the globe with very different backgrounds, but we're both shaped and are still being shaped by the movies we see and love. In each episode, we'll cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through three of our favorite movies. We hope these movies and topics are fun and revelatory to you, just like they've been to us. And Karan, why don't you tell our listeners what we'll be discussing today?
All right, so our topic for today is movies that shaped our view of making movies.
Cool.
This is a film podcast, so I guess this topic was always somewhere around the corner because we both love film and hence by virtue of that, just the art of making movies. But I guess I can go into how I was thinking about this topic.
Sure.
So maybe we'll touch on this as we go through our list, but I did take a stab at making movies and short films and such, and have some sort of personal experience doing it, even though I chose not to pursue that career for various reasons. But I think my list kind of gets into the magic and the not so magic of making movies, why that sucked me in the first place, and why I decided maybe not to go ahead with it. But then also why I love sort of just sitting on the sidelines and watching people do this odd thing, which is still to me, in my eyes, like the highest art form there is, and how difficult it is to make movies. And it's a miracle that these things even get made. And it's a double miracle that they're any good. And they are often, or more than what one would think. So so that's sort of how I thought about my list. How about you?
Yes, similar. So I made movies, if you can call it that, as growing up as a kid, with my sisters and friends, and a camcorder, kind of messing around with that. But and after that, never formally made anything. That was involved in some student films in college, helping folks out, and then was tangentially involved with the film industry. So I've been on movie sets and seen movies be made and being involved on the business end of it. So I was trying to think a lot about my experiences with both of those two things, but then also I always find it really fascinating when artists kind of turn the camera on themselves, or filmmakers turn the camera on themselves. I mean, all my favorite directors have at least one film where they deal with, in a direct way or an indirect way, their comment on what it's like to make movies. And I always find those fascinating, and all the ways that you mentioned too. But it is just to sort of show that movies are, that while the movies are magic, making movies aren't.
No.
And that is always fascinating to me, to see that struggle for various different reasons of what the artists deal with. So that's just what I was thinking about when I was choosing my my films we're going to talk about.
Sounds good. So I guess it's your turn. What's your number 3?
Yeah, so I'll kick it off with my number 3, which is Be Kind, Rewind, a film from 2008, directed by Michel Gondry, starring Jack Black, Mos Def, Mia Farrow, Danny Glover. And the IMDb plot summary: 2 bumbling store clerks inadvertently erase the footage from all their tapes in their rental store. In order to keep the business running, they reshoot every film in the store with their own camera with a budget of $0. So this film, I felt why I wanted to start with this one too, is it really, for me, captures the feeling of making these DIY movies. And like I mentioned, when I was younger, 8 to 15 or so, I was making all movies with my friends and my sisters. And in this film, when again, the plot summary, they have to recreate all these movies. So it's like Ghostbusters and RoboCop, and they're filming versions of those films just with things they find around their neighborhood. It's shot on a camcorder. All the editing is done in camera. There's crazy effects, but it's all in camera effects. And, the movies are only 20 minutes long. And these were the exact types of movies that I was making. I wasn't like remaking, a Ghostbusters or something like that. I'd write my own stuff and produce it, but it was that very DIY feeling. You're recording it on videotapes, as these folks do. And a lot of this, amateur actors, you're pulling in your friends and your family when you need someone else. I think those sections of this film, more than any else, either film for me, really capture what my experience of making movies, because this is as far as I got. watching movies with people actually making real films. Like I never did that, but I did make a ton of these, which, I just love the inventiveness, the different things that they do. There's a scene where they're needed to shoot like a day for night scene, which is a scene where they're shooting during the day, but they have to, the film takes place at night. And they use all these really inventive, like in with the camcorder, some negative filter in it. And I just remember doing similar things like that too, where it's like, look, I don't know what to do. Like I got to figure out some way to get things done. Just thought that was really funny. The other thing I thought was good about this movie too, that really captured what it felt like to make a movie is like you really are, in a way, kind of like doing it for yourself and for your close friends. So at least that was my experience with these films. They pull in people from the neighborhood and they want to be involved in the film just because they like seeing themselves on, the big screen, even if it's just a small TV. And, it is that sense too of the reason why I liked doing it was because it was fun to then see myself on the TV, but then also share it around to my friends and family when I would finish these films. So I just loved that they captured that as well, of getting everyone in the town involved. And they're proud of the work that they do, similar to, like in the movie The Music Man, where all the town's kids are in the band because they want to be on the stage and be performing. And I kind of got that vibe a lot from this movie too. So it's really, for me, like the movie that captures my experience making movies. I mean, as a film, I don't think it's really that great, to be honest. Michel Gondry, who's made some very surreal and crazy good movies like Eternal Sunshine, is definitely kind of weak, I feel. The beginning of the movie is really odd. I don't think that really works. The tone of it is kind of crazy. I think Jack Black is never been more annoying. It's like they dial up the worst parts of his screen persona, where you literally are like, this guy is just so annoying. He has no likable qualities, where usually he has a little bit of a softness. Here, I don't know whose decision it was Michel Gondry's or Jack Black to kind of take it to this extreme, but I just don't think it really works at all. But the thing that still really does, and upon rewatch, because I hadn't seen this film in a while, it really does pick up every time you're seeing them make one of these little movies or watch what the movie turned out to be. And I think that part of this film is incredibly inventive and really fun and makes me remember back to when I was making films.
Yeah. I'd never watched this movie. I don't think I had heard about it because one of my favorite podcasts is titled after the title of the movie. So,
oh, really? Okay.
So I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of clearly an homage to that. So it's a great podcast. I'm sure people who listen to podcasts know about that podcast because it's kind of legendary now. But yeah, you're right. Like when the movie started, I was like, oh, this is one of Alex's nerdy movies. I have to watch this.
Yeah.
Sure, I will muster up all the courage to watch this. And I was on my phone and I was like, oh yeah, Jack Black is on a 200. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
What's happening? Blah, blah, blah. And then something just kind of clicked in to your point, when they started shooting those movies. And also the way they find out that all the tapes have been erased. I think that whole sequence and the whole Mia Farrow stuff in the beginning, like how they get to the main plot, I think is also quite creative because it has to make sense, right? Like, why should we care? Why are you doing this? And I think that's what great actors like Donald Glover and such bring to the movie. This gravitas, like you care that this door must stay open. I mean, and this is, in my mind, like that's the most critical thing about kind of smaller, intimate movies, is that the stakes are, in this grand scheme, are very low, but they have to feel very, very high and heightened. And that's how you do it. So I think that was great. But yeah, once they start cracking on shooting all these movies, it's absolutely brilliant. Like I already want to rewatch all of that. Like, pizza underneath your head as your kind of blood spattering thing and all sorts of moments. It made me just think of, like you were saying, yes, making movies is hard and the magic is more in the final product. I think actually that's not true. The magic is in the making of it as well, even though it's so hard to do it. And I think it's when you strike those little moments, when you cook up inventive ways of doing something, that is magic, and then finally towards the end of the movie, I was completely in tears, watching everybody assemble in that little store. And then, of course, the entire town outside, because they were watching it projected on the screen and they didn't even know that was happening. And I know a lot of people might say, oh, this is Hollywood or movies being self-referential and patting themselves on the back. But the point is, I think we as humans, the one thing that does unite us, and this is going to sound very corny and saccharine, is storytelling.
Oh
I
yeah,
think we've
for
been
sure.
doing this from the beginning of times. Before we
Hmm.
even knew how to articulate or speak, we used to gesture and gather around a fireplace and tell stories. And I think there
Hmm.
is something magical, like you were saying, people want to see themselves or be a part of it. And
Right.
it's this combination of camaraderie, teamwork. It's seductive, it's exciting, but it's also primal. You're
Hmm.
part of something that's a little bit bigger than you, but it still feels so much off you. And I think those final scenes really capture that moment. And who cares if any of this is even good or not,
Right.
and
Right. Of
that's the
course.
point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the point is, in the movie, it's actually pretty good. Like, I would totally watch all of those movies, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
why they're a hit. There's a
Yeah.
line around the block. I love when Donald Glover comes back. They don't even let him get inside his
Yeah.
own store
Yeah.
because they're like, "Who are you? Get in line. We've been
Yeah.
standing here since hours." So, I know it's probably not his best work, Michel Gondry's, but I was pleasantly surprised by how much this movie moved me and how creative it was. So yeah, I'm so
Oh,
glad
cool.
that you recommended this movie.
Yeah. It sounds like you might have liked the film more than I do, actually.
Probably, maybe it's
Yeah.
because I watched it, first time.
No
And it was so,
expectations, too.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Especially the beginning of the movie, I was like, "Oh gosh, this is going to
Yep.
be horrible,"
Yeah.
and then it sort of changed on me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had really high expectations for this film when it came out originally,
Yeah,
because coming after Eternal Sunshine and Signs of Sleep, two films I really did like, and then this was just sort of like, is he sort of running out of steam? But yeah, I think the sweeted versions of those films, what they call it, the DIY
yeah,
versions, still just, I mean, I'd love to just watch those. Like, I want just like a DVD of like all of those and just could watch them. It's so good. But yeah, I'm
yeah.
glad you enjoyed it.
I will say though, in defense of Jack Black, it's a lot. I That said, I think you have to make it believable that these two people who are seeming idiots
Hmm.
can actually pull this off.
True.
And I think
Yeah.
in order to do that, you have to show at least one of the two who's just so out there and on such a 12 all the time
Hmm.
that you can sort of see that energy can be harnessed. If harnessed in the right way, it can lead to something with by the other guy who is the straight man,
Right.
between the two. So I think the more I think about it, that's what they were going for. But yeah, those first 15 minutes, it is a little bit tough to watch for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely. Cool. So what is your number three film that shaped your view of making movies?
All right. So my number three is Saving Mr. Banks from 2013, directed by John Lee Hancock, starring Emma Thompson, Tom Hanks, Quick and Colin Firth. Quick logline: author P.L. Travers reflects on her childhood after reluctantly meeting with Walt Disney, who seeks to adapt her Mary Poppins books for the big screen. So I put this movie on my list because to me, this movie symbolizes how movies can actually save people, And kind of going back to my point earlier on how primal this is and how powerful this is, the act of storytelling. And sometimes for creative people,
Mm-hmm.
I think they need a bigger canvas to do this and tell their story. And that could be writing a book or making a movie or what have you, to really heal themselves as humans of what they're carrying. And I think this is what this movie is about. The movie is flawed. It's heavy-handed, especially the flashbacks of all of Peel Travers growing up and such.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's a little heavy-handed, a little dull. But I think what really stands out is brilliant performances by two of his lead actors,
Mm-hmm.
great world creation of the golden age of Hollywood. But I think at a deeper level, what really comes through is that both these people, P.L. Travers and Disney, more so P.L. Travers, are carrying all this pain with them. They're just totally shackled by it. And there's something about the push and pull between the two of them, the art of making this movie, everything that happens in the rehearsal rooms through it. It ends up freeing both of these people of their childhood madness and shackles.
Mm-hmm.
And will they be better people? Will they be nicer? Will they be happier? Who knows? But it's sort of, it's a beginning in a way of something new. And I think movies do that. To quote Nicole Kidman, heartbreak feels good over here. And as corny as that is, and let's face it, I am corny, or I
Hmm.
like corny,
Hmm.
another movie dialogue, or I can use more corny in my life. That's the dialogue. um, there is something to that, and I think you see that in those final shots when Pale Travis is sitting in at the Chinese theater watching
Hmm.
this movie put together and just sobbing. And I have wept in that scene the number of times I have watched this movie, and what leads to it almost doesn't even matter, but it does actually, because you're primed for it. And that's
Hmm.
why it moves you, because you've seen this person carry this whole thing with her entire life, and there she is finally seeing this, and she's been saved, her dad has been saved,
Hmm.
the movie has been saved, the story has been saved, and hopefully tomorrow will be a better day. And apart from that, I just love, put a new person in a uncharted territory. And I love her introduction in the world of Hollywood, which
Hmm.
is saccharine, and everybody is like on 100 all the time, and the amount of sugar literally that's been brought on. I just love all of that.
Yeah.
The genius of Sherman Brothers. Like I'm sure there's a documentary somewhere out there on the making of Mary Poppins and how the Sherman Brothers worked. But
Hmm.
watching all that is sort of genius, like what they've created. I mean, I'm a big Mary Poppins fans. We've talked about this on this podcast. So,
Hmm.
watching this, I remember in LA in a pack screening, week one, and just seeing everybody. It's one of my memorable movie watching experiences in the theater as well, only because this movie is so beloved, right? So to get a peek behind the curtain of what it took to make it, just the music stuff, like I
Yeah.
think that's pretty amazing. But yeah, ultimately, like I said, it's a flawed film, but I think it does capture something deeper about movie making, and the fact that you have to be sort of crazy to want to go and do this in the first place. And both these people are pretty crazy and pretty flawed. So that's what comes through.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree with your kind of take on the film overall. Like, it's not perfect, but there are some parts that really do work. I definitely think for me the scenes that are the best are the ones about very directly about the making of Mary Poppins and her with the Sherman Brothers. And I love when movies are kind of take you behind the scenes of movies that you love. Like, I love making of movies.
Yep.
And though one of the downsides of that is when they change things like about what actually happened. And that's something that for me, it was just hard kind of watching this movie. Especially with that ending of her sort of like crying in the theater, which was not, they kind of give her a closure on the whole I shouldn't have sold this to Disney thing, and made it almost seem like she liked the film, which was not the case. I think years later she did like all the money she was making from it and kind of changed her tune a little bit in terms of talking about how much she really didn't like the experience. But I thought that, Disney made the movie. The movie was made by the Walt Disney Company.
Yeah.
And I feel like they were doing a little bit of, changing history a bit there, which was, I don't know. It bothers me sometimes when they change things that actually happen. But for me, I think this movie, all the things you talked about, it definitely discusses in terms of what the artist brings and how they're using the art to heal themselves. But I also feel what this movie does really well too is talks about like creative differences between
Mm-hmm.
these two creative forces. And one is this artist who's expressing her personal story, and the other one is the salesman. He's the
Mm-hmm.
the capitalist who sells art, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really feel that it has a personal connection. Even that scene when he kind of convinces her to kind of go along with things about, oh, this happened to me in my childhood and stuff like that, wasn't true too. Like, he just was trying to sell her
Right.
on trying to bring her across the line. So I thought that was really interesting kind of juxtaposition of the business of film, because it is a business, and also two people that view art very differently. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's so focused on the audience. What is the audience wants animation, they want fun, they want songs, because he
Right.
knows he's an entertainer. And to her, she's not really thinking about the audience, she's thinking about herself and protecting this story, which I
Yep.
think is a struggle that you see in artists, especially when in film, because it is a business first and foremost. It's not an art form in the same way that painting or poetry or writing, where you can sit in a room and just do it and that's
Right.
it. You need a lot of money, you need a lot of people, therefore there's a business, and therefore there needs to be a business angle to it. I think this movie does a really good job of kind of talking about those tensions and showing them between Walt Disney and Travers.
Yeah, no, I
I
totally
enjoyed those
agree.
scenes.
Yeah, the commerce and art part is like really in dialogue with each other, and I'm
Hmm.
sure that's going to come up at least on in my list. But yeah, you're right. Like in this movie, they're at equal footing.
Right.
They're sort of pulling and pushing against each other, which is actually really fun to watch. On your point earlier, like I'm sure she was not happy or what have you, but I can still see somebody sitting in that theater and being moved and being taken back to their childhood and such, even though they hate the whole thing,
Yeah, yeah.
that can happen.
For sure. And again, it's like I understand why I'm not mad at the movie for doing that. Like
Yeah.
in the narrative, it works and you kind of need that
Yeah.
closure. I just it's a personal thing with me when movies alter like
But
even
maybe
small
she
things in
did,
history.
like, maybe she was moved during the first screening. It's possible.
Not, I mean, yeah, according to her, but yeah, she could have been lying. Who knows? But
She
yeah,
could have been lying. I mean,
yeah,
that's the other thing.
yeah.
You watch Emma Thompson's interview during when the movie was coming out, and she was like, "This was a very hard character to pin down because not only was she eccentric and fixated, but also very unpredictable."
Hmm.
And she sort of said this, that I was afraid that people might think that I've got her wrong because she's so all over the place. Like, why would she wear a bright pink caftan? That's what she references.
Right,
Because in
right.
the end, I'm like, oh, suddenly Travers is very sunny and cheery and fun. But that's the sort of stuff she would do. Very erratic personality. So
Hmm.
anyway, but I know what you mean. When that happens, that can be annoying. But I think in this case, that's the sense I got, that this person is very erratic.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just a personal pet peeve of mine, so I just had to bring that up. Great. So my number two is American Movie from 1999. This is directed by Chris Smith, starring Mark Borchardt and Mike Shank. Plot summary: documentary about an aspiring filmmaker's attempts to finance his dream project by finally completing a low-budget horror film he abandoned years before. So this is a documentary about two incredibly independent an independent filmmaker from the Midwest, and what I think this movie shows and what he represents to me in terms of filmmaking is that most of the movies that are made are like this. They are very small, independent, constrained by everything from money and cast and crew and equipment and time, but it's the passion of the person that can drive it and get it through. And also, these are people where movies are their passion. It's not their livelihood. This is not their job. They're not good enough, or they haven't been successful enough yet where they are able to just be professional filmmakers. And then the other thing I think this movie does a really good job in capturing too is that movies can be an escape when you watch them, but also there really can be an escape too for the filmmakers making them. So in this film goes over a lot of Mark's troubles, his ex-wife, his current girlfriend, his kids. There's multiple scenes where he's talking about all these bills that he can't pay. And he's frustrated with his lot in life too, always complaining, that, he's never really amounted to something. He's, middle-aged and he's never accomplished anything. And there's all these frustrations. But what I think this film shows is that the movie and him trying to make all these films is a way for him to escape from his actual life. Put his
save
life
himself, like
and,
we were just saying.
exactly, and actually save himself, because of giving him something then that he can do, because his life would have no meaning or purpose. I mean, he has kids, so maybe I shouldn't be that harsh. He has meaning and purpose, but he feels like he needs to fill some void that he has. And filmmaking, even though it's very amateurish and arguably maybe he's not even a good filmmaker, but it's what really fills in those gaps for him. I just thought this movie's fascinating, just seeing his trials and tribulations. Very funny too. He's a lot of really funny, folksy kind of humor with his friends and his family. And it really does. He's someone who loves films. He references a lot of big Bergman films and really his favorite movies. But he yet again just can't make anything that is on that same level. And it is crazy too. Like, you think, okay, he's trying to make this horror movie, and okay, it's really bad, but never amounts to anything. But then you think back, there's a lot of directors that started off in small independent horror movies. Sam Raimi, James Cameron, John Carpenter, and they all became hugely successful and very talented directors. So what is stopping this guy? Or even someone like Kevin Smith, who famously maxed out like 13 credit cards to pay to make Clerks, in a very slapdash way, much in the same that he's trying to make his film Coven. But but he's one of the ones who doesn't make it. And I think what is so great about this film is it does show that other side of all these people out there that are making these films, and they don't ever be successful, but they still keep making them because they're passionate, because of those needs to escape. So I just think this movie, when I first saw it, a friend of mine actually in high school recommended, oh, you got to see this. I just saw this movie, and I rented it on a DVD and was just like blown away by how good it was. Watched it maybe like 5 or 6 times in a period of a month when I first saw it, and actually hadn't come back to it in a long time since then. And it still just was just as engaging, and heartwarming in a way, but sad in another way, and inspiring in another way. Like I just think this is one of the better documentaries about filmmaking. And it's someone who's not really necessarily a talented filmmaker, or a movie that never amounted to anything. So I just find that really interesting. But I really do enjoy this movie and what it says about why people make films.
Yeah, I had never watched this movie. I had never even heard of it. But yeah, echo everything you said. Just really, really loved it. I didn't know that this was a documentary. To me, it sort of felt like that it's almost like a mockumentary. Like the movie is made to make this commentary as opposed to it being an actual documentary. And I didn't have that much time to research, what this guy has done since or what have you. But so that's interesting that the thing that they did, this is a successful piece of whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of funny. I agree with everything you said. The other thing that I also picked up was kind of what we've been saying before as well. The other people who are around him, helping him, it's so interesting to me. They know that he's probably a loser. They know that this is not going to amount to anything, but yet they're there. And some of it is just friendship. Some of it is just killing time. Some of it is, I think, once again, that power of making movies, storytelling, camaraderie, everything we talked about earlier. And I found that so fascinating. And now that you told me this is a documentary, that rings true even more.
Oh, so you
the meaning.
You actually didn't even till just now realize that it was real. Oh, interesting. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah,
I thought it was just all created for the movie.
This is a real guy's life. Yeah. Which makes it even more incredible in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. But I was really touched by that, and his brother says is that the only gift that he has is the gift of the mouth. As he says, I was like, oh, what does that mean? And then he's like talking and convincing people. He can be pretty persuasive. And like you said, there's probably just a thin line between people like him who are passionate, crazy, dare to even do this, who actually make it, and then the ones who don't. Because he has all the ingredients. If you probably saw any of the people that you mentioned in this time of their lives, they probably look like this.
Oh, yeah.
Who are, hustling every second, convincing people, just taking whatever they can get to make whatever they want to make. They just made it somehow. Maybe they were smarter, maybe they were more talented. Who knows? Right. So yeah, really, really enjoyed this movie. And Mark, Shank, what's his
Borchardt. Oh, wait,
no,
Mark.
The other guy,
oh, yeah, friend. Mark Shank. Oh, he's amazing.
The moment he appears on screen, I just lost it, just laughing. Like the whole vibe, from the smile, the hair, all of it. I'm like, who are you?
Incredible.
So and hilarious.
It's like he's been on every drug. That story he tells when he was like, basically almost died in the hospital, and he's trying to get his LSD back. And he has that great line in the movie too. It's like, he's talking about scratch tickets. He's like, yeah, I like to gamble.
Yeah.
Because, when you gamble, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. When you use drugs, you always lose.
Yeah, and then he smiles at the end.
Yeah, and then he smiles. Yeah, it's just that guy is definitely quite a character. And the scene when he's like screaming and to record the ADR, and he's like, ah. It's just it's just amazing. He is definitely like someone who you don't believe is actually real, but he's a real dude.
Yeah, pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So good. The other thing I thought of, I know you're not a big Adam Driver fan, not so much for his acting, but just in general.
Yeah.
This guy, Mark, is in the movie Coven.
Yeah.
Sort of looks like Adam Driver. And I kept laughing, thinking about that. He's like they said, he's like a raw dog, by which he means he looks like a dog. So there is some of that, but it's just a much rawer version of Adam Driver, which I
Yeah.
thought was hilarious.
No, actually, if they ever make a fictionalized version of Mark's life, they definitely should cast Adam Driver in that role.
He will nail it as he
Yeah,
does
totally.
everything. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, my number two is my very first Indian movie on this podcast called Luck by Chance, 2009, directed by Zoya Akhtar, starring actually her brother, Farhan Akhtar, who's the lead actor, and Konkana Sen, Rishi Kapoor, a bunch of other people who are kind of legendary Bollywood folks.
Hmm.
But quick log line: when Vikram, who's the hero, gets trapped to play the male lead in a Bollywood film, he can't believe his luck, but it may ruin his relationship with his girlfriend. Horrible log line, but sure. Uh, this movie is kind of a good segment from what we were just talking about. I think this movie to me is about the all consuming obsession that people have about making movies. It doesn't matter what it takes, it doesn't matter how much it breaks you. You are there to face the rejection,
Hmm.
whatever it takes. You just in it, and you know it every minute that this is probably not what I should be doing, but there's something seductive about this medium. There's something compelling inside of you to do this and only do this, which sort of keeps people going. I think that's what this movie is about.
Hmm.
I also think this movie, and I'm so curious to hear your reactions because you haven't watched that many Indian movies, and probably not a movie that is set in the Bollywood world.
No, yeah.
So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. But I just think movie towns, no matter where you are in the world, are kind of like unique islands.
Mm,
And they're huge, but everybody knows everybody.
right.
A lot of magic is happening on the screen and behind the screens and under the table. And some of it is you, some of it is talents, a lot of it is luck. And I
Hmm.
think this movie, maybe in a heavy-handed literal way, shows you that, but I think it's quite clever at the same time. Obviously it's a commentary on how it changes people, the
Hmm.
cost it has on you, all of that stuff that we very well know about filmmaking. But that's not the stuff that sticks with me. I think what sticks with me is just the obsession of these people, just being in it and staying in it, and ultimately what happens to them. So that's why this movie is on my list. It also came out at a time which was very relevant to me. We talk a lot about timing of when you watch movies. So
Hmm.
I watched this movie right after business school, when I was sort of toying with the idea that should I actually pursue something more creative or something
Mm.
more business like in the entertainment world. And I was looking for jobs. I was talking to studios, and watching this movie on repeat. And it's so funny to me watching this movie after, like 15 years.
Hmm.
I hadn't seen it since. That the message of the movie is actually not super positive, and yet all I was taking away from the movie was, oh, I got to drop everything and do this.
You were seduced by
So
it.
yeah, but
Yeah.
that's it. Case in point, that's what this world does, that you don't even see it. And then of course I tried making some short films, and soon realized that, yeah, this is good, but I don't think I had that kind of hunger that
Mm.
you really need to stay in it and feel compelled like these people in this movie do. So I thought that's why this movie has sort of lived with me. And I haven't revisited this whole time because I was almost scared to watch it again, and sort of relive the stale air of my studio in Palo Alto
Mm.
watching this. I was like, I don't know if I want to inhabit that space again. But
Mm.
I suddenly remembered it. I was like, oh, okay, I think the time has come to face my demons. So I'm glad I rewatched it, and yeah, enjoyed it quite a bit. I think as a movie, it's Zoya Akhtar's first film, so it's a debut feature.
Okay.
I think it's quite accomplished. Like I said, it's heavy-handed at times, but I think from a performance standpoint, and this interesting line of it being a Bollywood kind of movie, but yet having something real and meaningful to say, it does that. It does walk that line. And it's a great display of, once again, the art and commerce thing here.
Hmm.
Commerce undercuts art for sure.
Hmm.
And I think that's very much on display. So yeah, that's my number two, Luck by Chance.
Yeah, this film. So yeah, I've not seen maybe only one Bollywood film. I had a roommate in college who was from India,
Hmm.
and I can't remember the name, but something started with a D. It was a really long film. And beyond
They're all
that, like,
long,
yeah, yeah, exactly. Beyond that, like,
literally.
I had no real exposure directly to any Indian films or Bollywood. I just kind of knew what it the tone of it, and that's basically it. So this was really fun. Like I liked this film. I thought it was. I really did focus a lot on the whole. I mean, it's called Luck by Chance, so a lot there's that heavy theme through this is about luck is really what drives everything, and I thought that was really interesting, and just fascinating that the main actor, or the guy actor who's struggling to make it. It's only a series of random events of,
Yeah.
he had a grandfather clock that he wanted to donate to this set, and then that guy took him to a party when then he met this actress, and then she remembered him when he was auditioning. It's like all these random things that had nothing to do with his talent or even like his drive. He just was moving through life trying to do what he could, and then all of a sudden
But
now
there
he's a
is
big
some
star.
drive, like at that party, for him to put
Oh,
himself out
sure.
there
True.
and sort of charm people. And I think and again, that probably works one in a million. But
Mm-hmm.
the point is that you do have to put yourself out there, and that
That's
he
true.
did.
No, that is true. Yeah, it's like your luck is happening, but you have to kind of take advantage of it. I think there was even a
Yeah.
scene where they talk about that in the film. But that it's just, and again, that whole thing started only because one guy like dropped the main star dropped out of the film. So if he didn't decide to take this other project, none of these chain of events would have happened in the first place. And I thought
Mhm.
that was really fascinating, and just happens all the time in movies. The Will Smith could have been in The Matrix, but he turned it down. And, Mission Impossible 2 changed the course of the world. We wouldn't have had Napster go down if it wasn't for that film. That
Mm.
film made put Hugh Jackman in Wolverine. If that film had ran, if they had Cassie and McKellen like they originally were going to, and it ran over, he wouldn't have been in Lord of the Rings. He wouldn't have been in
Right.
X-Men. So many things would have been changed, and that's all luck. And I think what this movie does really well is kind of address that. And I liked the ending too, where he is successful, but it's at a cost, and he's not really happy, and he ruins other aspects of his life. And the his girlfriend, or former girlfriend, hey, she's just a working actress, and she's kind of okay with
Mm-hmm.
that. I got at the end, like, happy ending
Mm-hmm.
for her. She's like, look, I don't need to be a big star.
No.
I'm just going to be a working actor and be happy with my life. And there's tons of those people. I know a lot of working actors, and they're obviously at one point they might have wanted to be Tom Cruise, but at some point, hey, it's a job, you like doing it, you get roles, and you enjoy the craft, and that's all that you really need. And it's not always about that that big success, getting that being biggest star in the world. So I
Yeah.
liked that. I thought it was a good positive message at the end. And but yeah, it was a little over melodramatic at times, but
Yeah.
again, I think that's just part of the genre. That's how things are done. And but no, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun look at, and to your point earlier too, fun look at an industry, but entertainment industry around the world are all the same. It's all small
Yeah.
town. All that one producer guy, he knows everyone doing favors. Same things happen in Hollywood. Same things happen, in all the major film industries. So I thought that was just universal. It's a universal story for sure.
It's a universal story. I mean, you were mentioning this earlier. Every director, every auteur has his or her own version of movie about making movies.
Uh-huh.
I can so see like a Tarantino version of this story.
Mm-hmm.
Who's famous for revisionist history and such. Or Spielberg handling a movie like this. What would that look like? And that's to
Mm-hmm.
your point. Like, this is such a universal story. But yeah, the other contrast between the two leads is also, she's for the first half of the movie just waiting,
Right. Yeah.
and I think that's sort of the other thing. And he even yells at her there's a dialogue that if you want to do something, go do something.
Right.
Why are you waiting? And that's easier said than done, of course. But I think I love sort of how there's a contrast between the two in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
which is sort of tipping more towards his favor, but then towards the end it's almost the opposite, that
Right.
it's still a contrast, but she's happier and successful on her own terms, as opposed to he probably not.
Right, exactly. Like, they both were successful and kind of getting what I think they wanted, but only one is happy, and the other
Yeah.
one is clearly, he doesn't like being the big star.
Yeah,
Who knows what's going
exactly.
to happen to him? But yeah, it's definitely recommend folks if you love movies and especially movies about movies, checking this out. It's I think it was on Prime, right? It's free to
Hmm.
stream on Prime, so definitely available out there. So I recommend checking it out.
Awesome. I'm glad you liked it. All right, what's your next?
So my number one is a very basic choice, but nonetheless, I could not help myself but put Day for Night
That's
as number
okay.
one for me. This is film 1973. Francois Truffaut directed it, starring Jacqueline Bisset, Jean-Pierre Aumont, and Francis Truffaut himself. The movie is about a committed film director struggles to complete his movie while coping with a myriad of crises, personal and professional, among the cast and crew. So yeah, this is a very basic choice. This is in my mind, though, the ultimate movie about movie making. I think what this movie shows is that making movies is work. It's very workmanlike. It's very artificial and very fake. But it is at the same time total magic. And this
Yep.
movie, every time I watch it, it just makes me fall in love with movies even more than I already love them. And really is like captures that feeling of movie magic, I think, more than any other film really out there. So like I said, there's a lot of workmen, movies are work, right? It is something that these people do as a job. The opening tracking shot, you see this with all the different
Amazing.
people that are involved, all of the crew, and everything. There's all these people involved in making this film. And this is like, they're doing very workmanlike stuff. They're building a set. They're constructing this. I mean, there's artistry in those things, but it's also, a very workmanlike. And there's a line in the film too, where it's like, all I remember about making the movie is the waiting, which, the
Hmm.
sets that I've been on too, it's like the most slow. You'd think watching a movie get made would be amazing, but it is incredibly boring.
Yep.
And I think this movie kind of captures the boring parts very well as well, and shows the art like what the director really does with this art too. There's that again amazing same shot. He's walking through, and all these people are coming up just asking him questions, and that's all that he does all day. Just answer, oh yeah, this one or this, or oh yeah, I choose this, or yeah, that looks fine, because he's the one steering the ship. But there's
Hmm.
all these other people involved, and I think that does that really well. And like I said in the beginning too, it's like this does show that movies are fake, right? Like he is telling you're showing, okay, you have to put your head like this or move your hand here, or there's a candle that they're using that is not a real flame. It's got a light bulb in it and an electric
So
cord kind of
cool.
going up her, which is a very cool device, but it's like none of this stuff is real. Like all we're doing is making this fake story. But the when they all of a sudden the music kind of kicks in, and then it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's all fake, but the emotions you're feeling as an audience member watching it are real. Even actually the song itself, the main theme, which sounds
Hmm.
like some Bach like Baroque piece,
Hmm.
which I love the theme from this, is
Hmm.
not actually, I mean, it was an original score. So they even faked the theme to sound like something that it even wasn't. Just again, showing that like movies are all just illusions, but still can make you feel something. Every single one of those scenes when they show like a little montage of stuff happening on the set, and that song comes in, it's just like, oh my God, like
Yep.
it
And
really hits
we
me. Like
love montages.
I love montages, and I love making movies, and the shots too of just the all of the nods he makes to his favorite filmmakers. There's a scene when they
Hmm.
dump all the books out onto the bed, and you see Hitchcock and all these other
Yeah.
directors, and flashbacks to him stealing the what's like lobby cards of Citizen Kane, which
Hmm.
sort of
Hmm.
also saying, look, like, I steal from the greats as a filmmaker, but that's kind of what you do. I appreciate them, and I also kind of take stuff from them. I mean, it works on so many levels. And then, the final thing it kind of does is talk about the price and the cost the artists who are involved in the movie pay. They're putting
Hmm.
their entire lives on hold. In a way, kind of like the reverse of what an American movie, like Mark was sort of putting his life on hold because he didn't want to deal with it. And then the movie was what was then giving him life. And
Right.
with some of these actors and the folks involved, it's like they're dealing with a lot of really hard things in their life, and they're kind of putting those things on hold and sacrificing, kind of fixing those parts of themselves or those relationships just so that they can put this art out in the world. So just another form of sacrifice that I think this movie does really well in terms of capturing. And yeah, I think it's even one of the last lines of the film was like, we hope you enjoy the movie, watching the movie as much as we did making it. which I just love that sentiment too. And I think that's something that you always hope when you see a movie that you love. It's like, oh, hopefully they enjoyed themselves when they put this thing together. But yeah, again, basic choice, but I think this movie is just fantastic as a film, and I think captures making movies so brilliantly. And I love it. I just what more can I say?
Nothing wrong in basic. Yeah, when we talked about this topic, this was the first movie that came to my head as well.
Mhm.
So if you had not put it on your list, I would have put it on my list for
Yeah,
all the reasons you talked about.
yeah, we
Because
got to
it's,
talk about it. Yeah,
yeah, it's just obvious. But
yeah.
at the same time, yeah, like I said, there's nothing wrong in basic, but I also think it's worth appreciating movies who do it right, no matter what. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who's probably not seen this movie, so
Yeah.
maybe they will sort of pick this movie up. But yeah, it's such a fun ride. I will say though, to kind of maybe counterbalance a little bit of what you were saying, yes, everything is fake, but I think it does come from a real place, because the people who are making this are humans, and
Hmm.
everything that's happening in their lives, all that baggage is fueling whatever is being put up on the screen, whatever is happening in the prep, whatever decision he made to go with whatever wig or whatever gun. Like, everything that's happening in your real life is, powering that. So,
Hmm.
and that's why it's such a elusive, odd thing of making movies, because if you're painting, like you were saying earlier, it's a solitary thing, and yes, your emotions, your baggage, your life is guiding that, whatever
Hmm.
you're putting out there. But in this case, there are hundreds of other people that are working with you,
Right.
so you're colliding with their baggages and your own baggage and your vision. All of it is happening at the same time, and that just creates this thing. And that's why, like, somebody asked me once that, oh, if you have a good script, why wouldn't you just make a great movie out of it? I'm like, well, wish if that were that simple. Because, and that's what, that doesn't happen. There's so
Yeah.
many good movies that are great on paper, but they're not good movies.
Hmm.
And you really see that in this movie, how that's put together. But yeah, what a ride. On this watch, the thing that struck me and I was laughing out loud was one of the production guys' wife, who's just sitting around
Oh
knitting
yeah, yeah.
in like weird areas because she despises the whole thing, and she's also jealous that something
Uh-huh.
might happen with her husband. It's so hilarious. And that's the other thing, right? Like, this is why this movie is, I think, elevated, because you could make a movie like this sort of cutesy and fun,
Hmm.
but because the detail of every character is so rich, that it's almost feels like you're invited to that set, you're part of
Hmm.
it. It
Hmm.
feels all real, and it's because of that. So yeah, what a great movie.
That's so good. So good. Okay, so now you're number one.
Well, I have a basic one as well. So I guess we both went with basics for our number ones, which is totally fine. My number one is Singing in the Rain from 1952, starring Gene Kelly, Debbie Reynolds, Donald O'Connor. And a quick log line: a silent film star falls for a chorus girl just as he and his delusionally jealous screen partner are trying to make the difficult transition to talking pictures in 1920s Hollywood. I mean, what can be said about Singing in the Rain that
Yeah.
hasn't been said already? In my
Yeah.
mind, the best movie musical ever made. Um, I'm sure others might disagree, but I just love this movie. But I think, to me, this is my number one, because this movie really symbolizes the joy of making movies and the camaraderie that you share in doing so.
Hmm.
And everything that we've talked about, faking it, the hardships, not knowing where it's going to come from, how it's going to happen, it's all there in the back.
Hmm.
But I think what's in front and dialed up is the joy of doing this, that you can see it from the actors and the characters, that I can't believe that I get to do this. And that's why you stay around,
Right.
despite all the craziness that come with it. And that's why this movie, it's a gift that just keeps giving. It's evergreen, will always be till the end of days. So that's why this is my number one. It's obviously an homage to changing times, which
Hmm.
are always happening. There's no other movie that has done that better. But I think the other cool thing about this movie is this juxtaposition of putting larger than life movie stars who are almost untouchable, especially in that era,
Right.
and making them sort of look like total normal people who don't know what they're doing. They're figuring it out. And I think that's part of the humor, but that's also sort of kind of commenting on the fact that movies are made by real people,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something about the alchemy of all this coming together that leads to that magic. And a lot of that is powered by joy and camaraderie. So I think that's sort of what this movie is insanely funny. Every song is amazing. And last thing I would say is, go Lina Lamont. I just one of the best characters. I mean, everybody's great in the movie, but
Yeah.
since the time I've watched this movie, it's always she that struck me. Because if you pull her out, this movie totally falls apart. There's no movie without
Mm-hmm.
Lina Lamont, which is sort of the irony of the whole thing, because she's the quote unquote loser.
Right.
But without her, there is no movie. The only acting Oscar nomination is hers from this movie,
Mm-hmm.
deservedly so. I can't stand it.
She's great.
So yeah, that's my number one, Singing in the Rain, another basic choice.
Yeah, I mean, you got to put the basics one in too. I mean, I think if we did an episode like this and didn't talk about either Day for Night or Singing in the Rain, I think we would have failed our listeners. So I'm glad you put it on here. I definitely would have if you didn't. I also really love this film. I think it's just a fantastic musical, really standout music numbers. Make them laugh, and obviously Singing in the Rain are two of the best. I first saw this in film school, actually. So it took a while for me to see this. I didn't kind of grow up seeing this, but the second that it did, I'm like, oh my God, this movie just totally blew me away. And yeah, I mean, I think what you mentioned, like technology, I think that's a big part of this film, just sort of showing how much technology can affect the movies. Even to this day, new technologies come and they displace, streaming is one thing that we're kind of going through right now in terms of Hollywood, right? In the last 10 years, that's been the new technology. Now it's displaced certain players, brought in new ones. But it's still we still make great content. I mean, that's all that it is at the end of the day, right? Just making good movies. And I think this movie also does show like how much work it goes into making films, like all of the scenes where they're actually making the movie, and it's not just something that is, as Day for Night, they make it do look kind of glamorous and fun, and this is just kind of like, oh my gosh, like it's like take after take, and they can't get this right, and it seems like not very much fun. And even the people that are making it don't even sometimes seem like they're having a good time.
They don't know what they're doing,
and they don't know what they're doing. Exactly. But at the end of, even though the movie that they put out ends up being successful and good, and they kind of fixed it in the editing, basically to make it a success. So I think that only does say a lot of different things about what it's really like to make movies, and that it's not actually glamorous, and that it is sometimes a pain in the ass. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing, but you can still make great art at the end. So yeah, I mean, kind of like what you said, it's what's there to say about Singing in the Rain that hasn't already been said. I mean, this is a classic and will always remain so, and is one of the best films out there, period. Though on this rewatch, I will say, like the ballet, when that's into the ballet sequences, then it starts kind of losing me a little bit. I usually in musicals, when they have those extended like ballet dance numbers, that's when I start getting a little bit bored, which I did in this time here. But look, that's just the format. Happens. Exactly. I'm not here for the ballet. I'm here for the songs and the dance. But
seen it so many times, too, right? So some of it is that as well. But can you imagine watching this movie on the big screen when it came out in the 50s? Like,
oh my
what
God.
a joy this would have been. Oh my gosh. But you mentioned this. I didn't mention it earlier. I watched it pretty late too. And again, I think this movie hit me right as I was becoming a cinephile, really appreciating movies, and to kind of watch this movie then and just be poured over in the joy and the love of making movies. It sort of really hit me at that level. And that's why when I think of making movies, it's really your number one and this number one and my number one that sort of come to my mind instantly, because there's like a personal connection of just like, me after watching a whole bunch of French New Wave movies and serious movies that are must watch movies that taught me a lot and enriched me, but then coming to this after that and just being just washed over with all the joy. Like I said, like that just was amazing. So yeah, that's my number one, Singing in the Rain. Any stuff that didn't make your list?
Yeah, a number of things. Singing in the Rain was on my list. Like I said, I would have talked about that if you didn't. The Player, adaptation, Mulholland Drive, Overnight, which is a documentary, 8.5, Ed Wood, which we've already talked about on the podcast, F for Fake, Mank, and then a couple films from directors that I admire that we're not making. It's not about making movies, but it is about making movies. So Life Aquatic, Inception, and 2019's Dumbo. Those are the ones on my list.
Yeah, quite a few overlap with mine too. I had The Player, I had Day for Night, and then I had Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's a great film.
All right, so that was our episode. So for all movie lovers out there, keep watching movies and keep listening to our podcast. So
yes,
rate us, subscribe to us. We really appreciate all the support that you've given us so far. We are available on all the podcasting platforms that you might be listening on. So until next time, bye.
Bye.